Hi there, I'm Adam from CatBorg Studio. Welcome in second episode of Let's Make Zombie Survival Game. In this episode we'll focus on player controller. Let's start our epic game development journey. Let's start in hierarchy view by creating the player game object. Right click and go to 3D object, capsule. Change name to player. Move the player game object to the first room. Before we continue, let's check the position. Hit the F key on your keyboard and inspect it. As we can see, we need to fix position so the player not levitate to hide from the ground level. Now, let's go to the materials folder and create a new material. Change its name to player and assign it to the player game object mesh renderer. Change the player's material base color to some nice green and continue. Perfect. Unfortunately, our player capsule is a little bit too fat, so it doesn't fit into our hospital doors. The easiest fix for it will be changing its X and Z scale to something like 0.8. Before we continue, we need to choose what will be the mechanism running our player controller. Due to the fact that we are looking forward to collisions with walls and different physical objects, it needs to be a physics-based. As we choose moving by physics, let's continue by adding a rigid body component to our player game object. As our player will only travel in 2 dimensions, we'll freeze its Y position. Moreover, let's limit its X and Z rotation. Furthermore, we don't want gravity to affect our player capsule. Now, let's add one more folder. Change its name to Scripts. Now, go to our new folder and create our first script. Right-click, go to Create, and choose Script. Change its name to Player Controller. Due to the fact that our player will be moved by physics, let's start by adding the fixed update void to our script. We will frame our to-do work by adding some comments. During the start void, our script needs to grab references to all used components. During each frame of the update void, our script needs to check for keyboard input from the end user. Then input will be changed to vector3. The vector3 will be normalized and multiplied by the player's speed. During each frame of fixed update, we'll apply the vector force to our rigid body. Time for variables. For sure, we'll need one for rigid body reference, so we are adding a variable type rigid body and naming it m_rigid body. Now, during the start void, we could grab and assign a reference to our m_rigid body variable. Let's write m_rigid body equal get component rigid body. Due to the fact that this call will generate garbage in memory, remember to avoid using get component during update or fixed update voids. Let's add another variable. It will be float m_speed. In order to expose it in the inspector, let's add the serialized field attribute to it. So m_speed is not a public variable, but we'll be able to change it from the inspector directly. Time for the update void. Let's start by grabbing some keyboard input. We will go with some rock solid old school WSD. Input get key will return a true value each frame when the key is pressed. We will need one more variable. Although we will be moving only in two dimensions, x and z, our character exists in 3D space. So to move it, we'll use vector3. Let's add vector3 m_move vector and set its initial value to vector3 0. When the W key is pressed, the Z value of our move vector will be increased by 1. When the S key is pressed, the Z value of our move vector will be decreased by 1. When the A key is pressed, the X value of our move vector will be decreased by 1. And finally, when the D key is pressed, the X value of our move vector will be increased by 1. Now, our move vector needs to be normalized, so will not travel faster when holding two keys. Then we'll multiply it by the player's speed. Let's jump to the fixed update void and set the velocity of our player rigid body to the calculated move vector. Finally, each frame needs to start with clearing our move vector, so our player will not accelerate constantly and will stop as all keys will be released. Now let's attach player controller to our player game object. Set the speed value and enter play mode. As we can see, movement works correctly. Moreover, as intended, player movement is limited by objects with colliders like walls. Let's fix wall's height to match our player dimensions. Go to the environment game object and select all walls. Then, by using the rect tool, enhance their size. Perfect. That's all in this episode. Let me know how do you like this content in the comments below, and see you in the next one.